Somebody touch my spaghetti!
I don't know how the internet works. Better yet, I don't have a clue on how a meme becomes popular. I often wonder what makes people laugh in an objective scientific matter. While there are plenty of memes that have justifiable reasons why people enjoy them, there are others that I just don't know. Like this one. So let's try to understand it. The first thing that caught my attention when watching this clip was finding out which studio produced it. I never seen this short, so I took it as a personal challenge to assume which studio made this before looking at its production credit. You can tell that this isn't Disney because when it came to Technicolor, Disney was perfecting the way of that look. A lot of it having to do with money, since Disney wanted to make it hard for competitors to use the same camera technique to perfect the colors. Therefore, most competitors would have one color stick out more. With this short, you could see yellow stick out like a sore thumb, which takes out the work Uglyworks was doing with Comic Color, which had more reds. This leaves us with Warner Brothers, which it could be, but the style of the 30s was transitioning from the traditional cartoon follies to Looney Tunes like Porky Pigs and the early Daffy Duck cartoons. What does this leave us with? Terry Toons. Paul Terry's an interesting character who gets talked a lot amongst animation historians as one of the earliest competitors against Disney. However, we don't hear enough about his cartoons since most of his work were products of their time. Mighty Mouse was the closest to being a hit in its early days, but even then comparing him to the Looney Tunes or Mickey Mouse showed that he was not as tough as his powers made him out to be. Heck, you can even argue Walter Lance's cartoons like Woody Woodpecker made more of a splash than Terry Toons. A lot of this had to do with production. Paul Terry made cartoons on the cheap side, but seemed relatively content with that. He's even been quoted with saying that his cartoons were more like a department store with Disney's more like Tiffany's, which gives the impression that Terry Toons wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel when it came to making toons, but to make cartoons that were part of the zeitgeist. It's more apparent when we actually look at the short The Three Bears. Now let's be real, it's a knockoff of Disney's Three Little Pigs. When that short was distributed in May of 1933, Three Bears came out almost 6 months later in 1934. There's surprisingly little research on the short, so most of what I'm saying is based on speculation and the reaction of Disney's Three Little Pigs. When that short came out, it was considered groundbreaking in a sense that audiences loved these characters. They were considered complex, while seeming similar, acted different, giving audiences a different taste from what they were conditioned to expect out of their cartoons. Now it's obvious that Paul Terry wanted to do his own version, so it came to no surprise that his short was an identical fable with arguably offensive stereotypes and a main character with a hilarious over-the-top reaction. And I bet you've been waiting long enough to hear me talk about the Italian-American stereotypes, so let's talk about the Italian-American stereotypes that most people find hilarious about this short.
And I practice the fiddle.
Don't you get excited, Pop. Keep your tempo.
The Papa Bear is so blatant in his portrayal of jokes, made though it's Italians back in the day, it's hard to ignore. The broken English, the pasta, and being easily irritated, these are the ones we've come to expect. What's odd is that these are the stereotypes that have not been seen as malicious as they were in the past, mostly because these are the jokes that Italians nowadays have embraced over the years. A lot of it due to the fact that it isn't seen as painting Italians as monsters, therefore it doesn't come across as insensitive like the shorts in Censored 11, but more in the same vein as Mexicans embracing Speedy Gonzales over the years as a fun character that could be perceived as racist. I know this seems odd coming from the guy who ranted that the sharks in Shark Tale were offensive, but in the grand scheme of marginalizing a culture that doesn't experience the hatred that most other races and ethnicities endure, it's safe to say that it's a meme that few paisans will get the paninis in a bunch over. But something else about the Papa Bear goes beyond being funny for the Italian jokes, but mostly because of other bizarre antics. For one, I don't think I'll understand the context of the Curly Stooge head slap. It's so loud, comes out of nowhere, and doesn't seem like the joke we get from most Italian stereotypes and more like an odd tick. Another is the behavior of what we've come to expect from cartoon characters at the time. When Papa Bear finds Goldilocks in the house, you'd think the short would conclude with a Tom and Jerry type slapstick most cartoons were doing at the time. Most of the slapstick comes afterwards with a hunter, which is where most of that happens. But instead the character just casually follows her around while arguing with her like a parent would try to chase down a defiant kid. To me, this is funnier because it's so out of left field. I mean, you're a bear, just eat her. Don't just, walk around and whine like a little girl. The little girl's making you look more like a child. And this is why I think the short has lasted as long as it has. It's just funny and bizarre enough to be memorable. But coming from an obscure studio that hasn't aged well over time, it's safe to say that it has all the ingredients of being a popular meme that I'll give it, 2 more months before being replaced with the next strange sensation on the internet.